The scream of the train whistle wasn't just a sound. It was a final, shrieking verdict, cutting through the thick fog of agony that held him captive. Kalen Blackwood's world was reduced to two things: the searing, molten fire eating into his wrists where the silver chains bit deep, and the violent tremor of the iron rails beneath his back. The vibration was building from a rumble to a roar, a promise of annihilation growing louder with every frantic beat of his heart. He tried to move, to summon the immense power of his wolf, but the silver poison was a leaden frost in his veins. His great strength was gone, leaving only a trapped, furious consciousness inside a broken vessel. This could not be how it ended, not for the Alpha King of the Northern Wilds. Not betrayed, bound, and discarded like forgotten cargo in the dead of night. The whistle screamed again, closer now, a blade of sound that sliced through the air. He could almost taste the diesel and scorched metal on the wind. Despair, cold and final, began to creep in. Then, cutting through the chemical stink of the train and his own pain, came a new scent. Fresh earth, wild thyme, and beneath it, the unmistakable, gentle signature of an omega, but it was laced with something sharp, fear, and a child's innocence. A small, clear voice pierced the roaring in his ears. "Mama, look! A man! He's hurt!" A woman's voice, tight with panic, responded instantly. "Ilara, no! Stay back!" "But Mama, the train! We have to help him!" "It's not safe, baby. He's an alpha. We need to go. Now." Kalen forced his head to turn, gravel digging into his cheek. Through the blurred edges of his vision, he saw them. A woman stood frozen at the tree line, her silhouette slim against the dark pines, her dark hair a wild frame around a pale, terrified face. Her clothes were simple, worn at the edges, and beside her was a little girl, her eyes wide, reflecting the distant, approaching light. The woman, Ilara's mother, was fighting a war inside herself. Kalen could see it in the tense line of her shoulders, smell it in her spiking scent. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to hide, to protect her pup from the obvious danger, from him. The ground was shaking in earnest now. The train's blinding eye swept around the distant bend, painting the tracks in stark, monstrous light. Maybe a minute, maybe less. The little girl, Ilara, made the decision for them all. She wrenched her hand free from her mother's grip with a surprising strength and darted forward, dropping to her knees in the gravel beside Kalen's head. "Look, Mama, the metal is burning him. It's hurting him." Her small, cool hand hovered just above his seared wrist, not touching, but he felt the whisper of her concern like a balm. The Omega, her mother, let out a shattered sound, half sob, half furious growl. Then she was there too, kneeling on his other side, her own fear momentarily drowned by a flood of urgent purpose. She grasped the chains, hissing as the heated silver scorched her palms, though not with the same vicious poison that ravaged him. "The lock," she breathed, her voice trembling but focused. "It's under the loop. My fingers are too big. I can't reach the mechanism." The little girl didn't hesitate. "I can, Mama. My hands are small." "Ilara, no. Don't you touch the silver." "I won't touch it, Mama. I'll be fast." The train was a deafening monster now, its light flooding over them, painting the scene in stark, racing shadows. The wind of its passage whipped their hair. 40 seconds. 30. Kalen tried to move, to order them to run, to save themselves. His throat produced only a ruined rasp. The woman, her eyes a storm of fear and desperate courage, met his gaze for one fleeting second. In that look, he saw her decision solidify. She gave a tight, sharp nod to her daughter. "Do it. Now, Ilara, now." The little girl's tiny fingers, nimble and quick, slipped through a gap in the chains where no adult hand could hope to go. Kalen felt her probing at the complex lock, her breath coming in little puffs of concentration against his arm. The train's horn was a continuous scream of doom. The ground was a drumbeat of impending death. I I almost have it, Ilara whispered. With a final sharp click that was almost lost in the roar, the lock gave way. The chains fell from his wrists like dead serpents. Agony, fresh and shocking, erupted as blood rushed back into his damaged flesh. But it was the pain of life, not the numbness of death. The woman, her name was Lyra, he heard it in his soul, didn't waste a second. She grabbed his arm, pulling with all her strength. Get up, please, you have to get up. He was dead weight, his muscles unresponsive. He stumbled, his legs buckling. The train was a wall of sound and light bearing down. They wouldn't make it. Then small hands were on his other side, pushing, straining. Help us, mister, please, Ilara cried. That small voice, filled with such determined hope, ignited something primal in him. With a ragged groan that tore from his very core, Kalen Blackwood found a last reservoir of will. He surged to his feet, staggering, and let the Omega and her pup drag him sideways. They tumbled off the raised railbed into the muddy ditch just as the freight train thundered past with a force that sucked the air from their lungs. They passed so close, he felt the heat of its metal hide. Silence rushed in, broken only by the fading scream of the train and their own ragged gasps. Kalen lay in the cold mud, the world spinning, his wolf howling weakly inside as it began the slow, painful work of healing the silver's cruel touch. Is he going to be okay, Mama? I don't know, my heart. I don't know. Lyra's hands were on him again, not pulling now, but assessing. We can't stay here. Help me, Ilara. We have to get him to shelter. Shelter. Kalen's vision swimmed as they half-dragged, half-carried him away from the tracks, deeper into the woods where the trees grew thick. He caught glimpses of a structure, not a house, but a shelter cobbled together from reclaimed wood and stubborn hope, tucked away like a secret, the kind of place you live when you have something or someone precious to hide. As they hauled him across the threshold, his wolf, clearing its head from the silver fog, finally caught Lyra's scent properly. Not just Omega, not just fear and wild time. Underneath it all, like a melody played on the strings of his soul, was a resonance he had waited a lifetime, 32 long years, to find. A recognition so profound, it stole what little breath he had left. Mate. The word was a thunderclap in the quiet of his mind,
His
a
last
truth
thought,
so
as
devastating
darkness swallowed
it
him
eclipsed
again,
the pain.
was of the little
Marcus,
girl's
his
golden
beta,
eyes,
his
so
betrayer,
like
had
his
been
own,
wrong. The
full of a
moon goddess
courage
had
that had
not
just
abandoned
saved a
him.
king.
She had been saving his
The
mate for the
second time I
moment that would
woke, the
utterly
world
destroy
was
his
soft,
world, or
not
finally
soft with
make it whole.
luxury, but with the quiet, weary softness of survival. Sunlight leaked through the cracks in the wooden walls, painting warm stripes across a floor of packed earth. The air smelled of herbs, lemon balm, and something sharp, and underneath it all, the scent of my rescuers. My wrists were wrapped in clean cloth, the agony downgraded to a deep, throbbing ache. My wolf was awake inside me now, but sluggish, like a great beast recovering from a long winter. The silver had done its damage. Voices floated from the other side of the single room, a low, tense hum. I don't know what you were thinking, Ilara. Do you have any idea what could happen if his pack finds him here? If any pack finds him here? You said we should help people who are hurt. Not alphas, Kuzeyildizim, my North Star. Never alphas. But my father was an alpha. A silence followed, so heavy and painful I could feel it press against my skin. Your father. Lyra's voice was a frayed whisper. Your father was a dream, and look where dreams have gotten us. I kept my eyes closed, listening, learning. They were hiding. From what? From whom? He's awake, Ilara announced, her voice suddenly clear and close. How did she know? I opened my eyes. I was lying on a thin mattress in the corner of the shack. Ilara sat cross-legged at its foot, watching me with those unsettlingly familiar golden eyes. Lyra stood by the small stove, her back rigid, a wooden spoon frozen in her hand. She looked like a deer poised to bolt. "Thank you," I said. My voice was sandpaper and gravel. "You saved my life." "Don't thank us yet," Lyra said, not turning around. "You need to leave, as soon as you can stand. If your pack is looking for you—" "They're not." The words tasted bitter. "My beta, Marcus, staged a coup. As far as the Northern Wilds know, Alpha Kalen Blackwood is dead, crushed beneath a freight train after abandoning his throne." That made her turn. Her eyes, a stormy gray-blue, widened. "Then you really need to leave. A power struggle is the last thing we need near our door." She was right, but my wolf wasn't listening to reason. It was fixed on her, on the scent that sang to my blood, on the impossible truth it had whispered before I fell unconscious. Before I could speak, a muffled buzzing sounded. Ilara dove under the mattress and emerged with my phone. The screen was a spiderweb of cracks, but it flickered to life. A broken message flashed, the words fragmented, but the meaning crystal clear. "Coronation, sunset tomorrow, Alpha Marcus." My hand shook as I took the phone, not from weakness, from a rage so cold it burned. "He's moving fast." "Then you need to move faster." Lyra's voice was firm, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the spoon. "Get back. Stop him." "Just go, Mama," Ilara's voice cutting through. "His hands are still bleeding." We all looked down. She was right. The silver wounds were weeping a faint, ominous fluid. The healing stalled. My wolf was fighting, but it was losing. Lyra made a sound of pure frustration. "I have some elderflower paste. It might draw out the last of the silver poison, but then you go. Understood?" "Understood." I lied, because as she knelt beside me, her scent washing over me, her gentle, capable hands unwrapping the bandages, my wolf howled its certainty again. Mate. Ours. And beneath her fear, beneath the wild time and earth, I caught the subtlest hint of something else on her skin, on Ilara's skin, a scent marker, a blood signature my wolf recognized on a primal level. It was a ghost of my own. The puzzle pieces, sharp and terrifying, began to click into my mind. Her fear of alphas, her flight, a daughter with golden eyes, conceived roughly 7 years ago. 7 years ago, during the last great summit, a night lost to ceremonial wine and moon madness, a night I had woken from with a haunting sense of loss and a scent I could never find again. Lyra finished applying the cool paste, her touch clinical yet careful. I looked at Ilara, who was drawing quietly at a small table. "How old are you, little warrior?" She looked up, smiling proudly. 6 3/4. My birthday is in the frost month." 6 3/4. The math was a hammer blow. My eyes found Lyra's. She had gone very, very still, her face pale as ash. She saw the understanding dawning in my gaze. "Lyra," I said, my voice barely audible, "tell me I'm wrong. Tell me the Harvest Moon Summit 7 years ago is just a coincidence?" The wooden spoon clattered to the floor. "Ilara," Lyra said, her voice dangerously calm, "go outside and check the rabbit snares, now." "But Mama, I just—" "Now, Ilara." The child went, confusion on her face, closing the creaking door behind her. The silence in the shack was absolute. Lyra stood, wrapping her arms around herself, holding herself together. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't ask, please. Don't ask if she's mine." I pushed myself up, ignoring the protest in my body. "Don't ask why you spent 7 years hiding my daughter from me." "She is not yours." The words exploded from her, laced with 7 years of fear and fury. "She is mine. I raised her. I protected her. I kept her alive when her own father would have seen her destroyed." "Her father," I repeated, the poison in that word spreading through me. "The father you told me about, the one who wanted her dead for being born without a wolf scent?" Her silence was a confession more damning than a scream. That was me, I breathed, the realization hollowing me out. You believed I would kill our child?
I knew you would. Tears streamed down her face now, but they were tears of rage. I was a nobody, Kaylin, a servant girl from a dissolved pack. And you were the Alpha King, untouchable. And your family, your laws, pups born without a discernible wolf scent, without a clear designation, they're considered cursed, flawed. I'd heard the stories of what happens to them. I spent 5 years trying to change those laws, my own voice rose, echoing in the tiny space. I've defended more vulnerable pups than any king before me. How could you not know that? How was I supposed to know? She cried. Should I have marched into your throne room, pregnant and penniless, and hoped? I had a life growing inside me. I had a choice, gamble her life on your mercy or guarantee it with my 2 hands. She looked at me, her eyes blazing with a mother's ferocious truth. I chose my daughter. I will always choose my daughter. Before I could respond, before I could process the devastating canyon of misunderstanding between us, the door flew open. Ilara stood there, breathless, her golden eyes wide with a terror that had nothing to do with us. "Mama," she panted, "wolves in the trees. They're coming." Time compressed. The profound, world-shattering truth of the last minute collapsed under the immediate, sharp terror of the present. I moved to the single grimy window, my body protesting every step. 3 large, sleek forms moved between the distant pines. Their posture wasn't of wolves wandering, it was of hunters tracking. Even from here, the faint, aggressive scent of pine and iron, the signature of Marcus's personal enforcers, carried on the wind. "Get Ilara," I said, my voice dropping into the calm, commanding tone of strategy. "Pack only what you need to survive 3 days. We leave now." Lyra didn't argue. The mother override had engaged. In 30 seconds, she had a small, worn pack in her hands, stuffed with what looked like strips of dried meat, a water skin, and a wrapped bundle. She grabbed Ilara's hand. "Where?" she asked me. All earlier conflict gone, replaced with the focused survivalism I recognized all too well. "You lead," I said. "You know these woods." She nodded sharply. "There's an old mining drainage tunnel, half a mile north. It leads under the ridge to the abandoned quarry, lots of stone to confuse scent." Of course she had an escape route. She'd had 7 years to plan them. We burst out the back of the shack, a flimsy sheet of plywood our exit. The forest swallowed us, dark and dense. Lyra ran with a sure-footed grace, pulling Ilara along. I stumbled behind them, my legs like water, my healing wolf screaming at the exertion. Every breath was a knife in my side, the silver poison still a lead weight in my blood. Behind us, I heard the crash of the shack's front door being kicked in. A furious howl split the air, frustration, not triumph. They'd found our absence. "Faster!" Lyra urged, her voice a tight whisper. Ilara was flagging, her small lungs heaving. I caught up to them in 2 stumbling strides, swept the girl into my arms despite the blaze of pain it sent through my injuries. She was light as a bird. "Hold on, little warrior," I gritted out. The tunnel entrance was a black maw hidden behind a thicket of thorny brambles. Lyra plunged in first. I passed Ilara down to her, then half fell, half slid into the damp, echoing darkness after them. The air was cold and smelled of stagnant water and rust. "Stay close," Lyra whispered, her voice echoing. "The floor is uneven." We moved in a crouch, the tunnel so narrow our shoulders brushed the slimy concrete walls. The only sounds were our ragged breathing, the drip of water, and the distant, fading sounds of pursuit. Complete blackness enveloped us after 20 yards. Ilara's small hand found mine in the dark. Her grip was tight, trusting. That simple act in the midst of flight and betrayal sent a shock through me that had nothing to do with pain. This was my child, my daughter, and she was holding my hand. After what felt like an eternity, a pinprick of gray light appeared ahead. The exit dumped us into a deep, rocky ditch behind a sheer cliff face, the old quarry. It was a desolate place of sheer stone walls and stagnant pools, a labyrinth of hiding places and dead ends. Ilara pointed to a narrow crevice in the rock face. "Through there. It opens to a higher ledge. We can see if they follow." The climb was agony, my vision spotted with black by the time we pulled ourselves onto a narrow granite shelf hidden from below by an overhang. We collapsed together, a tangle of exhaustion and fear. Below, the 3 enforcer wolves emerged from the tunnel. They milled at the entrance, noses to the ground, sorting through the cocktail of scents: damp stone, our fear, our sweat. The lead wolf, a massive gray, lifted his head and howled again, this time a clear signal: search the area. We were safe for the moment, but we were also trapped. The quarry was a bowl. They would fan out and find us. Lyra was looking at me, her eyes scanning my face, my heaving chest. You can't go on like this. The silver, it's still in you. You need to rest, to let your wolf fight it properly, or you'll never make it back to your territory. And if we stay, they find us, I said, stating the obvious. Ilara, curled between us, spoke softly. Papa can't fight them if he's sick. The word Papa, spoken so naturally, hung in the cold air. Lyra flinched. I felt my heart clench. I looked at Lyra, the mate I never knew I had. Take her, I said, the words tasting like ash. Take Ilara and go. I'll draw them off. Head west to the human towns. Lose yourselves. Her eyes flashed, not with fear this time, but with anger. No! Lyra, this is not a request from an alpha. This is a father's plea. Our daughter needs her mother. She needs to be safe. And what does she need from her father? She shot back, her voice low and fierce. A memory of a corpse in a quarry? No! We stay together. We find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. She leaned closer, her scent enveloping me. You said you spent years protecting the vulnerable, protecting pups like her. So protect us, not by dying for us, but by living for us. Fight the poison, heal for her. Her words were a different kind of command. They didn't stir my alpha dominance. They stirred something deeper, more primal: the protector, the provider, the mate. Ilara's small hand touched my burned wrist. Please, Papa, try. That did it. I closed my eyes, turning my focus inward, past the pain, past the fatigue, to the great black wolf that was my soul. It was wounded, snarling weakly in its cage of poisoned flesh. I didn't command it, I asked it. I showed it an image, not of a throne or revenge, but of a little girl with golden eyes and a woman with storm blue ones, both depending on me.
With a soundless internal howl, my wolf gathered itself. It stopped fighting the poison head-on and began to do what wolves do best: adapt. It started to wall off the silver, encapsulating the toxic fragments, pushing them toward the surface through my sweat, my blood, my very pores. It was a slower process, but it would allow me to function. I opened my eyes. The world was clearer. The trembling in my hands had lessened. It's working, I breathed. Lyra saw the change. A flicker of hope lit her eyes. Good, now we need a plan that isn't suicide. She scanned the quarry below. They think we're rats in a cage, so we don't act like rats. We act like foxes. What do you mean? She pointed to the opposite wall of the quarry, where a rusted skeletal elevator frame stood. The machinery shed at the base. It's full of old fuel drums, solvents. Wolves have sensitive noses. A slow, grim smile touched my lips. I understood. A distraction. She nodded. A big, smelly, frightening one. While they're dealing with that, we slip out the way we came in. They won't expect us to backtrack. It was risky. It was bold. It was, I realized, exactly the kind of clever, unexpected strategy a woman who'd outwitted the world for 7 years would devise. All right, Luna Queen, I said, the title slipping out before I could stop it. Let's hunt some wolves. The plan was madness, beautiful, desperate madness. We had to get to the machinery shed, create our chaos, and escape back through the tunnel before the enforcers recovered. All while I was running on borrowed strength and we were shepherding a 6-year-old. You remember the game Kuze Yıldızın? Lyra whispered to Alara as we prepared to descend from our ledge. The silent shadow game? Alara nodded, her small face solemn. Step where you step, breathe when you breathe. Good girl. Lyra kissed her forehead. She then turned to me, her gaze assessing. Can you carry her if we need to run? I'd carry her through fire, I said, and meant it. Our descent was a slow, torturous scrape down the rocky inner face of the quarry, away from the tunnel entrance where the enforcers were now fanning out. We moved like ghosts, Lyra and the lead finding invisible footholds. My body screamed, but the image of my daughter clinging to my back, her face pressed against my neck, was a potent painkiller. We reached the quarry floor, a landscape of shattered stone and weeds. The machinery shed was 100 yards away, a corrugated tin building leaning precariously. Between us and it lay open ground. We crouched behind a moss-covered crusher wheel. The 3 enforcer wolves were visible, moving along the far wall, noses to the ground. Their leader, the gray, was heading toward the elevator frame. "Now," Lyra breathed. We broke cover, sprinting across the open space. Every footfall sounded like a thunderclap to my ears. We were halfway there when a sharp bark echoed through the quarry. They'd seen us. "Go! Go!" I urged, shifting Alara in my grip. We slammed into the side of the shed. The door was held by a rusted padlock. I set Alara down, braced my good shoulder, and threw my weight against the rotting wood beside the latch. With a sickening crack, it gave way. Inside was a treasure trove of neglect, rusted tools, barrels, and jerry cans. The smell of old gasoline and chemicals was overpowering. "Find anything flammable that isn't metal," Lyra commanded, already grabbing a half-full can of something that reeked of solvent. I found rags, a brittle canvas tarp. Alara, wide-eyed but following her mother's lead, pointed to a stack of oily wooden pallets. "These, Papa?" "Perfect, little warrior." We worked frantically, piling our finds near the door. Outside, snarls and the sound of claws on stone were getting closer. They were almost there. "Stand back," I said. I took the solvent can from Lyra, splashed it over the pile, and grabbed a rusted steel file from the floor. I struck it hard against the door's metal hinge. Sparks flew. On the 3rd strike, they caught the solvent-soaked rags. Fire erupted with a soft whump, hungry and bright, climbing the tarp and wood with terrifying speed. Thick, black, chemical-laced smoke began to billow, filling the shed in seconds. "Out the back!" Lyra choked, pulling Alara toward a small, grimy window. I kicked out the rotting frame, cleared the glass, and helped them through. As I turned to follow, the gray wolf's snarling face appeared in the front doorway, silhouetted by the flames. His eyes met mine, blazing with fury. He wouldn't come through the fire, but he'd seen me. I dove through the window, landing hard on the ground outside as the shed behind me became an inferno. The smoke was a choking, acrid blanket, spreading fast, carried by the slight breeze. It was the perfect screen. "To the tunnel," I gasped, scooping up Alara. We ran, not with stealth now, but with pure, desperate speed, veiled by the rolling black smoke. Coughing, eyes streaming, we found the ditch, the brambles, the dark maw of the drainage tunnel. We plunged back into the damp darkness just as enraged howls, muffled by the fire and smoke, echoed behind us. We didn't stop running in the tunnel this time. We ran until our lungs burned from more than smoke, until the sounds of pursuit were swallowed by distance and the trickle of water. We emerged at the shack side entrance hours later, under a cloak of twilight. The shack was a dark, silent shape. No enforcers waited. Our fiery distraction had worked. They were either still at the quarry or searching the wrong woods. Inside, the shack felt different, smaller, emptier. The remains of our hurried departure were everywhere. It was no longer just a hiding place. It was a battlefield we'd abandoned. Alara, utterly spent, curled on the mattress and was asleep in moments. Lyra sank on the cable spool table, her head in her hands, trembling from adrenaline crash. I stood by the door, listening to the night, guarding. The mate bond, now acknowledged, was a live wire in my chest. I felt her exhaustion, her fear, her fierce, stubborn hope. It was overwhelming. "You should have told me," I said quietly into the darkness. She didn't look up. "Would you have believed me? A servant girl claiming the Alpha King fathered her child after a moon ceremony he didn't remember? I would have investigated. I did investigate. I searched for the Omega from that night for months. You searched for a phantom. I made sure of that." She finally lifted her head, her face drawn.
I used mud and crushed pine needles to mask my scent for days. By the time it faded, I was gone from the palace, and the trail was cold. I became no one. It was the only way to keep her safe. From me. From the crown, she insisted. From the laws, the council, the politics. From the alpha who was being pressured to mate with some Western pack princess for an alliance. Where would a bastard, scentless pup and her low-born mother fit into that story? Her words painted a picture of a loneliness and fear I could scarcely comprehend. She hadn't just run from a man. She'd run from an entire world that she believed would crush her child. I was never going to mate with Princess Celine of the West, I said, my voice low. My mother, she was forced into a political mating with my father. They respected each other, ruled well, but they were never happy. She made me swear I would wait for my true mate, no matter the pressure. She died 2 years ago, still hoping I'd found you. Lyra stared at me, the new information slowly breaking apart the fortress of assumptions she'd lived in for 7 years. I didn't know. How could you? I echoed her earlier words back to her, but without anger, only a deep, weary sadness. You were in the wind. Silence fell between us again, but it was softer now. The truth was out, jagged and painful, lying on the floor between us. What now, Kaylin? She finally asked. They know you're alive. Marcus will be furious. His coronation is tomorrow. He'll throw everything at finding you. Then we go to him, I said, the decision solidifying as I spoke, not as fugitives, but as a king reclaiming his throne, with his heir and with his Luna. She shook her head. They'll never accept me, an unmated rogue Omega with a secret pup? I'll be seen as an opportunist, a liar trying to manipulate her way to power. Then we give them no choice, I said, walking toward her. I stopped a few feet away, giving her space. We complete the mate bond, publicly, before the challenge. The bond snap is undeniable. It's pure moon magic. It will prove to every wolf present that you are my true mate, chosen by the goddess herself, and Alara's bloodline will be plain for all to see. Lyra's eyes widened. A public mate bonding was a profound, sacred act. It was permanent. It would tie her to me, to the crown, to a world she feared forever. It's too much to ask, I know, after everything. To bind yourself to me, to this life of danger and scrutiny? I took a step back. Forget I said it. We'll find another. No. The word was quiet, but absolute. She stood up, facing me. The fear was still there in her eyes, but beneath it, I saw the steel that had kept them alive for 7 years. I spent all that time running from a ghost, from a king I built in my head. You're not that ghost. You're a man who fights silver poison for his child, a man who values true mates over alliances. She took a deep, shaky breath. Ilara deserves her father, and I think I deserve to stop running. She held out her hand, not to touch me, but in offering. So we go, we bond, we face your beta, together. I looked at her hand, then at her face. This was the bravest thing I had ever witnessed. I placed my hand in hers. A current warm and sure passed between our palms. Not the bond snap yet, but its promise. Together, I agreed. On the mattress, Ilara stirred in her sleep, a small smile touching her lips, as if she could sense the storm of fear finally beginning to clear. Dawn found us already moving. The shack was now truly behind us, a chapter closed. We traveled light, but we carried the heaviest of burdens, hope and a plan that balanced on a knife's edge. Lyra led us not by main paths, but by deer trails and dried-up stream beds, her knowledge of the land our greatest asset. Ilara walked between us, her small hand in mine, a constant, warm reminder of what was at stake. She asked endless, quiet questions about the pack, about what a coronation was, and whether she'd have to live in a big stone castle. It's not a castle, little warrior, I said, my voice gentle. It's a stronghold built into the mountainside,
the Howling Crag. And yes, that's where we'll live. There are gardens and a library full of maps, and from the highest tower, you can see all the way to the Whispering Sea. Her eyes shone. Will I have my own room? You will have a suite of rooms, I said, smiling, and you can fill them with as many drawings as you like. She beamed, then her expression turned thoughtful. Will the other pups? Will they like me? Lyra and I exchanged a glance over her head. That was the question, wasn't it? I said, some might be unsure at first, because you're new and because you're the alpha's daughter, but anyone who is kind and brave like you will find a friend in you, and anyone who isn't, well, they'll have to answer to my mother and me. That seemed to satisfy her. The resilience of children was a marvel. As we walked, Lyra and I talked in low tones, planning the impossible. The challenge must be issued before the coronation begins, at moonrise. Pack law is clear. Once the crown is on his head and the pack bonds shift to him, deposing him means civil war. "And you're strong enough to fight?" she asked, her eyes scanning my still pale face. "The bond will give me strength, but it's more than that. Marcus is strong, but he's a brute. He fights with rage, not strategy. He'll come at me like a battering ram. I have to be the spear." We walked in silence for a while, the forest growing denser, the air cooler as we began our ascent into the foothills of the Black Ridge Mountains. "Kaylin," said Lyra after a long while, her voice hesitant, "the bond, when it happens, what should I expect?" I thought about how to explain it. It's like a door you never knew was closed swinging wide open. You'll feel my emotions, my physical state, as if they were your own. I'll feel yours. Our wolves will recognize each other as part of a whole. There will be a surge of power, of rightness. It can be overwhelming. I looked at her. We don't have to do it until we're ready, until you're ready. She nodded, chewing her lip. "And after, if we win, what then, for me?" I stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Alara stopped too, watching us with curious eyes. "Then, Lyra of Nopak, you become Lyra Blackwood, Luna of the Northern Wilds. Your voice will hold power. You will sit on the council. You will help me lead, not as a figurehead, but as a partner. Your first duty, as you've already shown, is to be the voice for those who have none. The forgotten Omegas, the rogue wolves seeking sanctuary, the pups who are different." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. They were tears of a burden listed, of a future imagined that wasn't just about hiding. "A voice," she whispered. "Yes," I said, my own throat tight. "Your voice." Our journey took us 2 days. We saw no more enforcers, but we felt watched. The woods had eyes. On the evening of the second day, we crested a ridge, and there it was, spread out in the valley below, the Howling Crag. It wasn't a castle, but it was magnificent. Ancient stonework merged with the living rock of a sheer cliff face. Towers spiraled upward, and the great ceremonial grounds before its gates were already lit with hundreds of torches, a sea of fireflies against the deepening twilight. The distant murmur of a gathering pack, thousands strong, floated up to us on the wind. The coronation was mere hours away. My wolf stirred, eager, angry, ready to reclaim what was his. But a new feeling tempered the rage, protectiveness. I wasn't just fighting for a throne, I was fighting for the 2 souls beside me. "We'll approach from the storm path," I said, pointing to a narrow, treacherous trail that led to a postern gate used by scouts. "It will be less guarded." As we began our careful descent, a figure detached itself from the shadows of a tall pine. A woman, dressed in healer's gray. She had my dark hair, and her eyes, though currently human brown, held the same sharp intelligence. My sister, Celine. "Took you long enough," she said, her voice thick with relief. She ran forward and pulled me to a fierce hug, then held me at arm's length, her healer's gaze missing nothing. "Silver poisoning? Barely healed. You look terrible." Then her eyes went past me, to Lyra and Alara.
They widened, shifting instantly to a lupine gold, as her wolf recognized what mine had. She sucked in a sharp breath. Moon goddess. Kaylin, is she... This is Lyra, I said, my voice formal, introducing her to the first member of my family, my true mate. And this is Alara, our daughter. Celine didn't hesitate. She stepped past me and knelt before Alara, bringing herself to the child's level. Hello, Alara. I'm your Aunt Celine. I've been waiting a very long time to meet you. Alara, shy but intrigued, smiled. Hello, Aunt Celine. Celine then stood and took Lyra's hands. And you have my eternal gratitude for saving my brother and for the courage it must have taken to come here. Her gaze was knowing, seeing the years of struggle in Lyra's face. Welcome home, sister. Lyra's breath hitched. A single tear finally escaped, tracing a clean path through the dust of travel. That one word, home, from a stranger who offered no judgment, seemed to unlock something in her. Celine then turned back to me, all business. Marcus has the entire guard loyal to him or too scared to oppose him. The council is split. Many believe his lies that you abandoned us, but there are others, Kaylin, in the shadows. They're waiting for a sign, for you. Then let's give them one, I said, looking down at the torchlit gathering, at my stolen stronghold. Take us in, Celine. It's time to remind the northern wilds who their true alpha is. The storm path was a vein of darkness in the cliff face, known only to scouts and those who wished to move unseen. Celine led, a silent gray wraith in the deepening dusk. I followed, every sense stretched taut, my healed but weary body protesting the climb. Behind me, Lyra moved with a sure-footed grace that spoke of years navigating treacherous ground, one hand steadying Alara. The scent of the pack below was a heavy tapestry, excitement, anxiety, the sharp tang of ambition. It was the smell of a people on the brink of change, believing they were about to crown a new, stronger king. The lie was a bitter taste in my mouth. We reached the postern gate, a narrow arch of black iron set deep in the stone. Celine produced a heavy key. The guard here is one of ours, she whispered, but be swift. The gate groaned open just enough for us to slip through, and we entered the cold, echoing underbelly of the howling crag. These were the service corridors, the realm of stone and shadow, where the grandeur of the throne room above was just a distant rumor. The air smelled of damp rock and ancient dust. A young guard, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, nodded to Celine, then to me. Alpha, he breathed, fist over his heart. They're all gathered in the stone circle. Marcus is making his final address before the moon crown is brought out. Where is he keeping the crown? I asked, my voice a low rumble in the confined space. The sun vault, under heavy guard, 4 of his best. I shared a look with Celine. We need a distraction, something that pulls attention away from the vault and the circle, just for a few minutes. Lyra, who had been listening intently, her arm around a tired but watchful Alara, spoke up. You said the stronghold is built into the mountain. Are there old ventilation shafts from the forges or the kitchens? Celine's eyes lit with understanding. The great hall hearths, the flues are massive, and they open into the ceremonial grounds. If we could introduce a smoke that isn't fire, a smoke that carries a scent that means only one thing, wolfsbane and crushed nightshade, the scent of a challenge being issued in the old way. It was a bold, risky move. It would cause panic, confusion, but in that confusion, I could get to the vault, and we could make our move. I can prepare it, Celine said. The healer's stores have what we need, but I'll need to get to the upper flue access. I'll go with you, Lyra said suddenly. You'll need someone to watch your back, and Delara, she looked at me, a world of trust and terror in her eyes. She should stay with you. My heart clenched. To separate now felt wrong, but she was right. Celine couldn't go alone, and Delara would be safest hidden with me in the shadows until the moment came. I knelt before my daughter. Little warrior, I need you to be my shadow now. Can you do that? Stay close, stay silent, like we did in the quarry? She nodded solemnly, her small hand slipping into mine. I can be a shadow, Papa.
Lyra bent, kissing Alara's forehead. "Be brave, my North Star. We'll see you soon." Her gaze met mine, and in it was a promise and a plea. Keep her safe. I gave a slight nod. With my life. The two women melted into a side passage. I was alone with my daughter in the dark corridor. I led her deeper into the stronghold's heart, toward the sun vault. We moved like ghosts, pausing at every intersection, listening. The distant roar of the pack was a constant thrum through the stone. Ilara's small voice whispered up to me, "Papa, are you scared?" I looked down at her upturned face, golden eyes gleaming in the dim light from a distant sconce. "Yes," I answered honestly, "but not of the fight. I'm scared of failing you and your mother. That's a different kind of fear. It makes me careful. It makes me strong." She considered this. "Mama is scared a lot, but she's the strongest person I know." "Your mother," I said, my voice thick, "is the bravest wolf I have ever met." We reached a vantage point, a gallery overlooking the antechamber to the sun vault. Below, 4 massive warriors stood at rigid attention, armed with silver-tipped spears. Marcus was taking no chances. Then it began. A thin, grayish smoke, laced with the unmistakable acrid stench of wolfsbane and the sweet rot smell of nightshade, began to curl from the ornate grates high in the chamber walls. The scent of formal challenge, of a wolf throwing down his life for his rights. The guards snapped to alertness, coughing, their eyes watering. Confusion broke their perfect formation. "What is that?" one growled. "Is there a fire?" "Sound the alarm," another barked, but the smoke was spreading fast, clouding the air, carrying its ancient, provocative message out into the connected corridors and, I hoped, to the very edge of the stone circle. "Hear me, Pack, a challenge is in the air." The distraction was our moment, but as I prepared to move, a new figure strode into the smoky antechamber. Not Marcus, a woman, tall, regal, her blonde hair like a fall of ice. Katerina. Her cold eyes scanned the room, unbothered by the smoke. She was from the Western Claws, the princess my council had once pushed me to mate. Her presence here, now, was a piece of the betrayal clicking into a more sinister picture. "Fools," she snapped at the coughing guards. "It's a ruse, a child's trick. Secure the vault. No one gets in or out." My blood ran cold. She was smarter, more dangerous than Marcus. Our window was slamming shut. Below, Ilara tugged my hand. She pointed not at the vault, but at a small, almost invisible servant's door behind a tapestry on the far wall of the antechamber. A door that the guards and Katerina had their backs to. A door that, if my memory of these blueprints served, led to a cleaning closet that shared a wall with the vault's interior. A daring, impossible idea sparked. We couldn't fight our way through 4 guards and Katerina, but we didn't have to. "Change of plans, little shadow," I whispered, a new kind of fire ignited in my chest. "We're not going to take the crown. We're going to steal it from under their noses." The servant's door was a sliver of shadow. With the guards distracted by Katerina's commands and the lingering, irritating smoke, we had one chance. I held Ilara close, took a breath that tasted of herbs and danger, and moved. We crossed the gallery walkway in a low crouch, descended a spiraling service stair, and emerged in a dim hallway behind the main antechamber. My heart hammered against my ribs, a drumbeat of pure adrenaline. Ilara was a silent, wide-eyed presence at my side, her trust in me absolute and terrifying. The tapestry was heavy, woven with scenes of ancient battles. I slipped behind it, Ilara following. The door was there, old wood reinforced with iron bands. Locked, of course. But the lock was old, simple. I pulled a thin, sturdy pin from the clasp of my worn cloak, a habit from my early scouting days. With careful, silent pressure, I felt for the tumblers. A soft click. The door gave way an inch. I peered through the crack. A closet, as expected. Shelves held cleaning rags and pots of polish, and on the far wall, the stones were different, smaller, newer fill, the shared wall with the sun vault. I pulled Ilara inside and closed the door softly behind us, plunging us into near total darkness. The only light seeped through the gap under the door. "Papa, how do we get through the wall?" Ilara whispered, her voice barely a breath. "We don't," I murmured back, running my hands over the cold stone. "This wall is just stone, repair work." I found a mortar line that felt crumbly, less solid. This is where they expanded the vault generations ago. I needed something to dig with. My eyes landed on a heavy iron boot scraper leaning in the corner. It was crude, strong. I wedged its edge into the weak mortar and pushed with all my strength. A shower of dust and small fragments pattered to the floor. The sound was horrifyingly loud in the silence. We froze, listening. Beyond the door, in the antechamber, Katerina's voice had stopped. Had she heard? "Check that noise," her cold voice ordered. Footsteps approached the tapestry. Ilara clutched my leg. I held my breath, my body coiled, ready to fight, to die shielding her. The footsteps paused right outside our door. I could smell the guard's oiled leather and sweat. A hand brushed against the tapestry. Then, from the main corridor, a new voice shouted, "Intruder in the lower halls! It's the king! He's here!" But our victory was short-lived. The door to the closet suddenly flew open, flooding the space with torchlight. Katerina stood framed in the doorway, her beautiful face a mask of icy fury. Her eyes went from the hole in the wall to the crown in my hand to Ilara crouched beside me. "So," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom, "the Ghost King returns as a thief, and with a bastard pup as his accomplice. How poetic." She didn't call for guards. She simply stepped inside, drawing a slender, silver-coated dagger from her belt. "Give me the crown, Kaelin, and perhaps I'll let the child live. She's defective anyway. No one will miss her." A rage, black and absolute, erupted within me. My wolf surged against my skin, the silver poison forgotten in the face of this threat to my child. A low growl tore from my throat. Before I could move, a blur shot past me from the dark hallway. Lyra. She didn't attack Katerina. She placed herself squarely between the blade and Ilara, her body a shield, her own hands empty. "You will not touch my daughter," Lyra said, her voice not a shout, but a cold, clear command that seemed to vibrate in the stone around us. Katerina laughed, a brittle, ugly sound. "Ha! The rogue Omega has a spine. How adorable. Move, or you die first." Lyra didn't move. Her gaze was locked on Katerina's, and then something happened. Lyra, the Omega who had hidden for 7 years, did the one thing her instincts had always screamed against. She let her own power, the quiet, deep, unyielding strength of a mother and a true Luna, roll out from her in a wave. It wasn't alpha dominance. It was something purer, older, the authority of the den mother, the heart of the pack. It filled the small space, a pressure of protection and fierce love. Katerina, for the first time, looked uncertain. Her grip on the dagger wavered. "Your fight is with me, Katerina," I said, stepping forward, the crown held like a weapon. "Leave them out of it. Or are you so weak you only threaten children and mothers?" Her eyes snapped back to me, fury overriding her unease. "You have nothing, Kaelin. No army, no allies, just a stolen crown and a broken family." "Then face me for it," my voice said, challenging her. "Here, now. Or are you and Marcus only brave when you have chains and poison?" A noise from the antechamber, shouts, the clash of metal. Celine's voice rose above it. "The Alpha King is here. He holds the moon crown. Stand down." The tide was turning. Katerina heard it too, her face twisted in hatred. "This isn't over," she spat. She didn't flee like a coward, but backed away, her eyes promising vengeance, before melting into the chaos of the hallway. I pulled Lyra and Ilara into a swift, hard embrace. "Are you hurt?" Lyra shook her head, trembling against me. "We saw her come this way. I couldn't let her—" "You were magnificent," I breathed into her hair. Then I turned to Celine, who appeared in the doorway with 2 loyal warriors. "The stone circle. Now. It ends tonight." Holding the reclaimed crown, with my mate at my side and my daughter's hand in mine, I walked out of the darkness of the vault and into the torchlit corridors of my home, ready to face the traitor under the eyes of my pack. The path to the stone circle was a gauntlet of stares and gasps. Word traveled faster than we did. Wolves pressed back against the walls as we passed, their eyes wide, taking in the sight, their Alpha King, alive, bearing the crown they thought lost, flanked by a fierce unknown Omega and a small girl whose golden eyes mirrored his own. The murmur that followed us was a living thing, shock, confusion, dawning hope. The scent of Marcus's lie began to curdle in the air. We emerged into the vast open-air stone circle. Torches blazed around its perimeter, and a sea of faces, thousands of them, turned as one. In the center, on a raised dais of black rock, stood Marcus Shadowclaw. He was dressed in ceremonial furs, a false king awaiting his false crown. His expression of smug triumph shattered into one of pure, unadulterated rage when he saw me. The crowd rippled, a wave of silence crashing over them. I walked forward, my family beside me, Celine and our handful of loyalists forming a protective wedge behind us. I stopped at the edge of the sacred circle, the space reserved for challenges and coronations. "Marcus Shadowclaw," my voice, amplified by the circle's acoustics and my own alpha power, boomed across the gathering, silencing the last whispers. "You betrayed your alpha. You poisoned me, bound me in silver, and left me for dead. You lied to our pack. You do not deserve to lead a kennel of strays, let alone the northern wilds." He recovered, his face contorting into a sneer. "Kaelin Blackwood, the king who ran. You abandoned your throne, your people. You are weak, and the pack needs strength. I have taken what you could not hold." "He lies." Lyra's voice, clear and strong, cut through his bluster. Every head turned to her. An Omega speaking unbidden in the circle? It was unheard of. "I found him chained to the train tracks, dying from silver sickness. My daughter and I freed him. He did not run. He was left to die." The pack's attention swung to her, then to Ilara, who stood straight beside her mother, unflinching under the scrutiny. The resemblance was undeniable. Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "And you are who? Some rogue he paid to tell a pretty story? Where is your proof?" "The proof," I said, my voice dropping into a deadly calm, "is in my hands." I lifted the moon crown. A collective gasp went up. "Stolen from the sun vault, which you had guarded, to crown your treachery. The proof is in my veins, still burning from your silver. And the proof," I looked at Lyra, my heart swelling, "the proof is standing beside me." I turned to face her fully, under the gaze of the entire pack and the rising moon. I took her hands in mine. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and a luminous courage. "Lyra of the Forgotten Paths," I declared, my voice meant for her, but carrying to every wolf present. 7 years ago, under a harvest moon, the goddess brought us together. Fear and deception kept us apart, but no longer. You are my true mate, the other half of my soul, the mother of my heir. Will you accept the bond? Will you stand as my Luna, not in shadow, but in the full light of our pack?" Tears streamed down her face, but she held my gaze. She saw the years of my loneliness in my eyes. She saw a promise of a future built together. She saw a throne she never wanted, offered as a partnership. "Yes," she said, and her voice, though soft, carried on the still night air. "I will." I leaned forward, resting my forehead against hers, a traditional gesture of profound connection.
and we let go. We released the walls we'd each built, the fear, the doubt, the loneliness of 7 years. The mate bond did not snap, it bloomed. It was like the sun rising inside my chest, a warmth, a light, a completeness so staggering it stole my breath. I felt her heartbeat sync with mine. I felt her fierce love for Alara, her terror of this moment, her dawning hope, all as if they were my own emotions. And I felt my own strength, my resolve, my love for them both flow into her. A visible energy, a shimmer of gold and silver light erupted from where our skin touched, wrapping around us in a gentle, radiant whirlwind. The pack gasped as one. This was no trick, no political ploy. This was moon magic, raw and undeniable. The bond snap was the ultimate truth. As the light faded, Lyra stood taller. Her stormy eyes held a new depth, a new authority. She was no longer just Lyra, she was my Luna. I turned back to Marcus, who looked as if he'd been struck. The bond was proof of everything. Proof I hadn't abandoned my throne for a selfish reason. Proof Lyra was not a paid liar. Proof Alara was my true-born heir. The pack has seen the truth, Marcus, I said, my voice now ringing with a combined power, hers and mine. Your lies are ash. I challenge you, here and now, for the right to rule, wolf to wolf, as our laws demand. The elder, an ancient wolf with a face like weathered bark, stepped into the circle. He'd witnessed 3 coronations. He looked from me, to the crown, to the radiant Lyra, to the seething Marcus. The challenge is valid and witnessed, the elder intoned, his voice like stones grinding. Alpha Kalen Blackwood challenges the usurper Marcus Shadowclaw for the throne. The fight will be to submission or death. Let the moon goddess judge the worthy. The circle cleared, the pack pressing back to form a living wall. Marcus tore off his ceremonial furs, his body already beginning to ripple and change. Lyra squeezed my hand once, her bond sent feelings a mix of, I believe in you, and come back to us. She took Alara and stepped back with Celine. I placed the moon crown at the edge of the dais and faced my beta, my betrayer, under the cold, watching eye of the moon. My wolf, whole and fury-filled for the first time since the silver chains, surged to the surface. The final battle for my pack, my family, my future was beginning. Marcus shifted first. His wolf was a monster of muscle and rage, a dark brown brute covered in the silvery scars of 100 violent victories. He was larger than my wolf, built for crushing power, not finesse. He snarled, saliva dripping from jaws that could snap a deer's spine, and the sound was a challenge that shook the very air. I let my own change take me. It was different now, after the bond. Cleaner, faster, the pain of old injuries vanished. My wolf form was sleek black, smaller but built of whipcord muscle and ancient cunning lines. And along my spine, now clearly visible in the torchlight, ran the faint, noble silver tipping of the pure Blackwood bloodline, the same marking Alara carried. A murmur of awe swept the crowd. The royal marking, it's true. Marcus didn't care for markings. He saw only a rival to be destroyed. With a roar that held no strategy, only hate, he charged. He was a battering ram of fang and claw, aiming to overwhelm me immediately. I didn't meet his charge. I flowed to the side, a shadow avoiding a falling tree. His massive bulk slammed into the stone where I had been, scoring the rock with his claws. I darted in as he recovered, my teeth raking across his shoulder. Not a deep wound, but a message. I am faster. I am smarter. He whirled, snapping. I leapt back, feeling the wind of his jaws. He charged again, and again I sidestepped, this time leaving a gash on his flank. The crowd was silent, watching the dance of brute force against calculated motion. Frustration boiled off Marcus. He wasn't used to enemies who wouldn't stand and be crushed. He changed tactics, trying to herd me towards the edge of the circle to limit my space. I let him think he was succeeding, backing up step by step. Through the bond, I felt Lyra's spike of fear as I neared the ring of torches. I sent back a pulse of reassurance. Watch. When my back was almost to the crowd, Marcus saw his chance. He gathered himself for a final, decisive pounce, aiming to pin me and tear out my throat. That's when I moved. Instead of backing further, I dropped low and surged forward, under his leap. His belly, unprotected, passed over me. I twisted upward, my back legs driving into the earth, and my jaws found the soft juncture of his leg and torso. I bit down, not to kill, but to cripple, to bring the mountain down. He howled in shock and pain, crashing to the stone beside me, his momentum shattered. I was on him in an instant, my teeth at his throat, pressing against the pulsing artery there. One hard jerk, and the fight, his life, would be over. He froze beneath me, panting in agony and fury. The law was clear. I had him at my mercy. The stone circle was utterly silent. Every wolf watched, waiting for the kill. I could feel Lyra's hope, Alara's held breath. I could feel the pack's collective tension. This was the moment. To kill him would be just, expected. It would cement my power through fear. But through the bond, I also felt Lyra's essence, her 7 years of protecting life, of valuing survival above vengeance. I saw Alara's golden eyes, which should have known only kindness. I lifted my head from his throat, shifted back to human form in a ripple of power. I stood over Marcus's massive, wounded wolf form, breathing heavily. "Submit," I commanded, my voice echoing in the silence. His wolf thrived, trying to rise. I placed a foot on his injured shoulder, not with crushing weight, but with undeniable dominance. "You are beaten, Marcus. Your lies are exposed. Your strength has failed. Submit to your alpha and you will live. Refuse, and I force you to end you for the good of the pack." It was a choice he never would have offered me. The old Marcus would have gloried in the kill. But I was not the old Kalen. I was a king with a Luna and an heir. My justice could be tempered with wisdom. His wolf form shivered, the fight going out of him. Slowly, painfully, he shifted back to human, clutching his bleeding side. He looked up at me, his face a mask of defeated hatred. But beneath the hate was the stark understanding that he had lost everything. He bowed his head, exposing his neck in the ultimate wolf gesture of surrender. "I submit," he gritted out, the words tasting like poison. A sound like a great wind swept through the pack, a release of held breath, a sigh of resolution. The elder stepped forward. "The challenge is decided. Alpha Kalen Blackwood is victorious. The traitor Marcus Shadowclaw is defeated and submits to the Alpha's justice." I looked from Marcus to where Katarina stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale, her earlier arrogance gone. "Katarina of the Western Claws," I announced. "You conspired with a traitor against the Northern Wilds. You are banished. Your alliance is forfeit. Leave our territory by dawn or share his fate." She didn't argue. She simply turned and disappeared into the crowd, a winter ghost melting away. I turned my attention back to Marcus. "Your life is spared, but your freedom is forfeit. You will be taken to the border mines. You will work there, under guard, for the rest of your days. You will contribute to the pack you sought to destroy. That is my judgment." It was a harsh mercy, a living death for a warrior, but it was just. He was hauled away by the guards, now loyal to me once more. I turned then to my pack. Thousands of eyes were on me, full of uncertainty, hope, awe. I walked to the dais, picked up the moon crown, but I did not place it on my own head. I walked to Lyra. I knelt before her, in front of everyone. "A kingdom is nothing without its heart," I said, my voice thick. "You are my heart, our pack's heart. Will you wear this crown with me?" Tears glistened on her cheeks as she nodded. I stood and gently placed the circlet on her brow. It settled there as if it had always belonged. Then Celine brought forward a simpler, smaller circlet of woven silver leaves. I knelt again before Alara. And you, my brave, clever heir, our future. I placed the circlet on her head. Crown Princess Alara of the Northern Wilds. The pack elder's voice rose once more, filled with a reverence that had been absent before. Behold your true Alpha King. Behold his Luna, Lyra Blackwood. Behold the royal heir. The line is secured. The pack is whole. And then the sound I had ached for, not a hesitant murmur, but a full, thunderous, unified howl of acceptance and fealty. It rose from thousands of throats, a wave of sound that shook the stars, welcoming their Alpha, their Luna, and their princess home. Under the triumphant moon, surrounded by the singing of my pack, I pulled my mate and my daughter into my arms. The long night was over. Dawn was finally ours. The first morning of the rest of our lives dawned clear and cold over the howling crag. The celebrations had lasted deep into the night, but within the Alpha's quarters, a quiet, profound peace had settled. I awoke not to the silence of my old chambers, but to the soft, rhythmic breathing. Lyra was curled beside me, her dark hair fanned across the pillow, the moonlight crown resting at the bedside table. In the adjoining room, I could hear Alara's quiet, sleepy murmurs through the open door she had insisted remain open. The mate bond was a quiet hum in my veins, a constant, warm awareness of her presence, her calm, her deep, dreaming contentment. It was a feeling of home so solid it made my chest ache. I slipped from the bed, padding to the wide balcony that overlooked the waking stronghold. Mist clung to the valley below, and the first rays of sun gilded the highest towers. This view had always been one of duty and burden. Today, it looked like a promise. A soft presence joined me, Lyra, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes still soft with sleep. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her without a word. We stood, watching the light spread. They're all going to expect so much from you today. The council, the petitioners. I corrected gently. They will expect much from us, and we will meet them, together. She let out a slow breath. A council. I spent my life avoiding alphas, and now I have to sit and advise them? You don't advise alphas, my love, I said, turning to face her. You lead them as their Luna. You speak for the pack's heart, for the mothers in the nurseries, the pups in the schools, the omegas in the kitchens, the scouts on the borders. Your voice is now the most important one in the room because it is the one that has been silent the longest. She looked up at me, the morning light catching in her gray-blue eyes. The fear was still there, but it was being steadily crowded out by a dawning sense of purpose. A voice, she repeated, the word holding more meaning now. Your first official act, I said, smiling, is to decide what we do about Alara's education. She's clearly brilliant and brave. Do we find her a private tutor? Have her join the other pack pups in the learning hall? The learning hall, she answered. She needs to be among other children, to make friends, to be normal, as much as she can be. She grinned, a true, unburdened smile, though I doubt our daughter will ever be normal. Good, I said, kissing her forehead. Normal is overrated. A small cough made us turn. Alara stood in the balcony doorway, her new silver-leaf circlet already perched proudly on her sleep-tousled hair, clutching a rolled-up parchment. Good morning, little wolf, Lyra said, opening her arms. Alara came forward, but she was buzzing with energy. Good morning, Mama. Good morning, Papa. She thrust the parchment at me. I made a map. I unrolled it. It was a detailed, child's-eye view of the howling crag. There was our balcony, marked with a little crown, the stone circle, the kitchens, cookies here, with an arrow, and a large, sunny room labeled in careful letters, Voice Room. I looked at her. The voice room? For Mama, Elara said, matter-of-factly, so people who are scared to talk to the big alphas in the scary stone room can come talk to her here, in the sun, with maybe some cookies. Lyra's breath hitched. She knelt and pulled Alara into a crushing hug. That, she said, her voice thick, is the most perfect idea in the world.
The day unfolded in a whirlwind, but anchored by that morning's peace. The council meeting was tense, but Lyra's presence changed the air. She didn't speak often, but when she did, it was to ask a simple, cutting question about a new border policy about how it would affect hunting families, or whether the healers' stores had enough supplies for the coming winter. The old alphas, used to debating trade and war, were visibly disarmed, forced to consider the practical heart of the pack. Later, as we walked the battlements, Celine joined us, her healer's robes swishing. "The pack is settled," she reported. "Marcus is on his way to the mines under heavy guard. The last of his loyalists have sworn new oaths. The mood is hopeful." She looked at Lyra, "And I've had the first petitioner for the voice room, an Omega from the lower village. Her pup is being bullied for being small. She didn't know who to tell." Lyra's spine straightened. "Where are they?"
"Waiting in the south garden." Lyra nodded, a new light in her eyes. She squeezed my hand and walked away, not as a reluctant queen, but as a Luna on her first mission. I watched her go, pride swelling in my chest. Celine elbowed me gently. "You found more than a mate, brother. You found the missing piece of this pack's soul." As dusk approached, Lyra found me again in my study. She looked tired but radiant. "The mother and pup are sorted. I spoke to the learning hall mistress. The bullies will be corrected, not punished harshly. The small pup will have a special friend assigned, an older, kind one." She sank into a chair. It felt right. "It was right," I said. "You were brilliant." Alara burst in then, followed by a harried-looking servant. "Papa, Mama, Cook says I can have a puppy from the new litter in the kennels. Can I, please? I'll take care of it every day. I'll name it Shadow because we were good shadows." Lyra laughed, the sound free and joyful. I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, at my mate's smiling eyes, at the warm stone of my ancestral home around us. The threats weren't gone forever. Katerina was out there, nursing her hate. The mysterious ancient houses from the warning note still lurked in the shadows. There would be challenges, winters, disputes. But in this moment, as the fire crackled and my family's laughter filled the room, I knew we had already won the only battle that truly mattered. We had found each other. We had come home. The king was no longer in the dark. He was standing in the light, surrounded by his heart, ready for whatever dawn would bring. Peace, I was learning, was not the absence of storms, but the warmth of the hearth while they raged outside. For 3 moons, our new life took root. Lyra's voice room became the busiest place in the Howling Crag, a sun-drenched sanctuary where the pack's quietest members found courage. Alara, with her puppy Shadow, a fluffy, serious-faced black pup charging at her heels, became a familiar, joyful sight in the learning halls and gardens, her laughter a new kind of music in the ancient stones. The warning note about the ancient houses remained a shadow in the back of my mind, but with no further sign, I let myself believe it might have been a last desperate trick of Marcus or Katerina. I was wrong. The threat came not with a roar, but with a whisper. It began with small, strange occurrences. A revered ancient carving of the first alpha in the forest grove was found defaced not with violence, but with an older, almost forgotten symbol painted over it, a coiled serpent swallowing the moon. The winter food stores, meticulously counted, were found subtly short, not from theft, but as if the counts themselves had been wrongly recorded generations ago, now coming to light. Then the dreams started. Not for me, for Lyra. She began to wake in the deep night, trembling, her side of the bond humming with a dissonant fear. "Stone halls," she would murmur, her eyes seeing something far away. "Old stones, older than this place, and a voice. It's calling something. It's calling blood." I held her, poured calm through our bond, but the unease settled in my own bones. These were not the nightmares of past trauma. They felt like echoes or warnings.
The breaking point came on the night of the full moon run. The entire pack, in wolf form, was a flowing, howling river of joy under the silver light, celebrating the first true unity we'd felt in years. Lyra ran beside me, her gray wolf form sleek and strong, Alara a bouncing, enthusiastic cub between us. As we passed the oldest part of the territory, the Blackwood ancestral stones, Lyra suddenly stumbled. She shifted back to human in mid-stride, falling to her knees on the moss, not in pain, but in a trance. Her eyes were wide, glowing with an unearthly silver light. "The stones remember," she chanted, her voice not her own. It was layered, ancient. "The blood debt remains, the pact is broken, the sleeper stirs." Then she collapsed. The run dissolved into panic. I carried her back to the crag, Celine working frantically. There was no physical injury. It was as if her spirit, her omega essence, the very heart tied to the pack in its land, had brushed against something dormant and malignant. When she awoke hours later, she was pale but clear-eyed. "I saw it, Kaylin," she whispered, gripping my hand. "Not a dream, a memory. But not mine. It's in the land, in the stones. There were 5 families, long before the Blackwoods unified the wilds. One of them, they didn't just fade away. They were bound, sealed away for a great betrayal. Their name was struck from the stones, but a blood oath was made to keep the seal, an oath tied to the ruling Alpha's line and the pack's bond." The pieces of the warning note slammed together. "The old bloodlines are awakening. The game has only just begun." "This is what the note meant," I said, cold dread seeping in. "The ancient house isn't just a rival, it's a curse we inherited, and Marcus's betrayal, the near collapse of the CAC, it weakened the seal. My near death weakened it further." Celine, who had been researching furiously, entered with a crumbling, hide-bound tome. "The Vane family," she said, her voice grim. "The serpent of the moon. Historians list them as assimilated, but the healer's secret histories tell a different story. They tried to claim the pack's heart power, not through leadership, but through a dark ritual that would have bound every wolf's will to theirs. The other 4 families helped the first Blackwood Alpha stop them. He didn't destroy them, he imprisoned their core power, their collective spirit, in a stone vault deep beneath these very mountains. The seal was maintained by the strength and unity of the Blackwood Alpha's line and the pack's bond. And a broken, almost dead Alpha with no heir would have shattered it completely. I finished, the full scope of the disaster dawning. My survival, finding Lyra and Alara, had pulled us back from the brink, but the seal was now cracked, and something was trying to get out. The dreams, the defacement, the food counts, it's them, testing the cracks, whispering, looking for a way back. Then we find this vault. We reinforce the seal. "It's not that simple," Celine warned, pointing to the text. "The ritual to reinforce it requires 3 things. The Alpha who holds the line, his true Luna to represent the pack's bonded heart, and the innocent blood, his heir born of both to symbolize the unbroken future." We all looked at the doorway where Alara stood listening, shadow in her arms. Her golden eyes were huge, but understanding. "You need me," she said, not as a question. "No," Lyra and I said in unison, instinctual terror uniting us. "But I'm part of the pack," Alara said, walking into the room with a dignity that belied her years. "I'm the innocent blood. If I don't help, the bad thing gets out and hurts everyone, including Shadow and my friends in the learning hall." Her simple, fearless logic disarmed us. She was right. This was her legacy too, to protect the pack. Lyra knelt, pulling Alara close. "It might be scary. It might be dangerous.
We'll be together. You, me, and Papa. Like always." The decision was made. Using Celine's texts and Lyra's haunting, bond-enhanced connection to the land's memory, we found the entrance not in some distant cave, but in the deepest, oldest cellar of the Howling Crag itself, behind a wall that hadn't been opened in centuries. Behind it was a stairway that led down into the mountain's heart. The air grew cold and thick with the weight of ages. The walls changed from worked stone to raw, ancient rock, carved with fading, ominous runes. At the bottom was a circular chamber, and in the center, on a pedestal, was not a treasure, but a horror. A large obsidian stone shot through with veins of pulsating, sickly green light. It was contained within a cage of shimmering silver energy, but the cage was flickering, and dark hairline cracks scarred the obsidian surface. From it emanated a whispering, a sound like dry scales on stone and distant mocking laughter, the sealed spirit of House Vane. Around the pedestal, 5 stone slots were set into the floor. One, directly before the obsidian, was dark and empty. The other 4 glowed with a faint, steady light. "The 4 loyal ancient houses," Celine whispered. "Their symbolic power helps hold the seal. The 5th slot, it needs the Blackwood symbol, activated by the Alpha, the Luna, and the Air." The whispering from the stone grew louder, coalescing into a voice that slithered into our minds. "Blackwood, you are weak. Your line was almost extinguished. Give us the child. Her fresh, innocent blood is the key, not to seal, but to shatter." A tendril of green energy lashed out from a crack, snaking across the floor toward Alara. I stepped in front of her, a growl ripping from my throat, my alpha power flaring in the chamber. The energy recoiled, but the stone shook, and more cracks spiderwebbed its surface. "We have to do it now," Lyra cried. We moved as one. I placed my hand on the empty stone slot, channeling my alpha power, the authority of my bloodline. Lyra placed her hand over mine, her omega power, the gentle, unbreakable strength of the pack's heart flowing into the mix. It felt warm, right. Then Ilara, she placed her small hand on top of ours. "For the pack," she whispered. The moment her skin touched ours, a shock wave of pure gold and silver light erupted not from us, but from her. It was the light of pure potential, of a future unchained by the past. It blasted into the stone slot, which ignited like a kindled star. A beam of brilliant white light shot from our activated slot, connecting with the 4 other glowing ones. They flared in response, and together, the 5 beams lanced into the flickering silver cage around the obsidian stone. The cage blazed with renewed power. The whispering turned to a scream of fury as the green, pulsating veins within the obsidian were forced back, compressed. The hairline cracks sealed over with molten silver. The chamber filled with a profound, humming silence. The oppressive weight lifted. The obsidian stone sat dormant, its prison once again secure, reinforced not just by old magic, but by the living, breathing bonds of a reunited family. It was over, for now. Exhausted, we stumbled back up the stairs into the light of the crag. The sun was rising. Ilara, tucked safely in my arms, was already half asleep. Lyra leaned against me, her bond sent feelings a mix of profound relief and lingering awe. We hadn't just faced an enemy. We had faced our own history and reaffirmed our future. The ancient house was sealed. The pack was safe. But as we emerged, Celine met us with a new, thoughtful worry on her face. The ritual, it required the air, the innocent blood. But Kaylin, Lyra, the texts say the reinforcement is permanent only if the heir's bloodline continues. The seal is now tied to Ilara's future, to her heirs. The victory, it seemed, was not an end. It was a new beginning and a new responsibility passed to our daughter. The game had changed, but it was still being played. And for the first time, looking at my sleeping child and my weary mate, I wasn't afraid of the next move.
We were the board, the pieces, and the players, and we were together. The deep, resonant silence that followed the sealing of the veined stone was a sound all its own. It was the silence of a foundation made solid, of a shadow finally banished to its proper corner. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased. The whispers in Lyra's dreams became the peaceful quiet of a mountain night. The pack, sensing the shift on a primal level, thrived with a new, unshakable vitality. Life in the Howling Crags settled into a rhythm that was no longer new, but deeply, comfortingly familiar. My study, once a place of solitary strategy, was now often filled with the sound of Ilara practicing her letters at a small desk and the soft thump of Shadow's tail. Lyra's voice room had a permanent waiting list, and she had begun training a council of steady-hearted omegas and betas to help, spreading the mantle of compassion throughout the pack. One crisp autumn afternoon, we were in the high meadow above the crag, the one dotted with the last golden wildflowers. Ilara was teaching Shadow to hunt for a ball of woven yarn, her laughter ringing like clear bells. Lyra sat beside me on a warm rock, her head on my shoulder, sketching the scene in a book. "This," she said softly, her pencil pausing, "this is the piece I never dared dream of." "It's the piece you built," I said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You brought the heart back to this pack." She smiled, looking at our daughter. "We all did." Her expression grew thoughtful. Celine's words about the seal being tied to Ilara's future, it worried me at first. It felt like another burden placed on her. "I know," I sighed. "It did me too." "But then I realized," Lyra continued, turning her sketchbook to show me, she had drawn the three of us in the meadow, but in the sky above, she had sketched not one sun, but a whole constellation of tiny, interconnected stars. It's not a burden, it's a promise that her future, her happiness, her family are now inextricably woven into the safety and joy of every wolf here. She's not a lone key to a lock, she's the first stitch in a new, stronger tapestry. Her wisdom, as always, cut to the true heart of the matter. The seal wasn't a chain on Ilara, it was a testament. The pack's safety was now forever linked to the Blackwood family's love and continuity. It was the ultimate motivation to build a world worth passing on. As if on cue, Ilara ran up, breathless, Shadow trotting proudly behind her with a ball of yarn in his mouth. "Papa, Mama, I've decided something." "Oh?" Lyra asked, raising an eyebrow. "Should we be worried?" Ilara shook her head, her golden eyes serious. "When I'm grown up and I'm the alpha, I'm going to have a Luna or a loon who is my true mate, just like you. And we're going to have lots of pups, so the tapestry has lots and lots of stitches. And we'll all live here, and the seal will be so strong that it will shine like the sun." Lyra and I looked at each other, our hearts so full they felt ready to burst. Our daughter, who had known fear and hiding, now dreamed of a future of love, family, and unwavering strength. "That," I said, pulling her into a hug with Lyra, "is the most brilliant plan I have ever heard." The seasons turned. Winter cloaked the crag in silent white, and we celebrated the frost month with Ilara's 7th birthday, a pack-wide festival of lights and sweets where she was celebrated not as a fragile heir, but as the joyful, clever pup she was. The voice room distributed warm cloaks and extra food to every family, ensuring no one spent the cold months in want. Spring returned, and with it the first official summit since my return. The leaders of the 4 loyal ancient houses, the families whose symbols had helped us reinforce the seal, arrived. They were elders, proud and reserved. They came not to challenge, but to see the alpha who had survived, the Luna who had been found, the heir who had secured their shared legacy. The meeting was held not in the formal stone hall, but in the sunlit voice room at Lyra's insistence. Ilara sat quietly with us, Shadow at her feet. We served not ceremonial wine, but spiced tea and honey cakes. The head of the strongest house, an old wolf named Torvin with eyes like flint, studied Alara for a long time. Then he looked at me and Lyra. The bond is true. The air carries the light. The seal is stronger than it has been in 10 generations. He placed a gnarled hand over his heart. House Ironwood stands with the Blackwood tapestry. One by one, the others gave their formal, solemn allegiance. The ancient pact was not just restored, it was renewed, strengthened by the living proof of our united family. That night, under a spring moon almost as bright as the one on the night of our bonding, the pack gathered once more in the stone circle. But this was not for a challenge or a coronation. It was for a song. Lyra had started the tradition. She said a pack needed more than laws and strength. It needed a shared song. So, with the musicians, she had woven a new melody, one that held the whisper of the mountain wind, the strength of the ancient stones, and the joyful rhythm of a running river. As the music began, I took Lyra's hand. She took Alara's, and we stepped into the circle not as rulers, but as the first thread. We began to move, a simple, swaying dance of unity. One by one, pairs and families from the pack joined us. Elders, warriors, parents with pups on their shoulders, young couples. The circle became a swirling, beautiful expression of the pack itself, connected, diverse, and whole. Looking at the faces glowing in the moonlight, feeling Lyra's hand in mine, and seeing Alara's delighted smile as she danced with a young pup her age, I knew this was the happy ending. Not an ending at all, but a perfect, ongoing beginning. The threats were memories. The shadows were banished. The whispers were now songs. The king was no longer just a ruler in his stronghold. He was a husband, a father, a stitch in the living tapestry of his pack, standing in the warm, unshakable light of a love that saved him, not just from train tracks and silver, but from a lifetime of lonely darkness. And as the pack's song rose to the stars, a promise sung by 1,000 voices, I knew the final, beautiful truth. Our story wasn't about a rescue. It was about a homecoming, and it had only just begun.